Canada Post and its union are obviously at odds, but what's the real issue going into this possible work stoppage? Bill Tufts with Fair Pensions for All says the real issue is the unfunded liability into the billions of dollars, and the pension plan needs a revamp. Canada Post Union, though, CUPW, they want to change the issue away from that. They want to focus on pay equity, somehow claiming that in 2016, men and women are paid differently for doing the same jobs. I'm not sure if I believe them. Bill, do you?
No, I don't. It was sort of interesting to watch as this progressed. The discussions coming out of Canada Post about the labor dispute initially were all about the pensions. But what happened is they started to get blowback, and they had to find that they needed to change the channel very quickly. And so somebody up in the think tank said, hey, let's make it about pay equity. I think if anybody investigated the issue, there is nothing really to discuss about pay equity, and they just wanted to quickly get it away from pensions.
Okay, but before we go on to discussing the problems with the Canada Post pension plan, let's just quickly deal with this. The idea that in 2016, in a massively bureaucratic organization that has been unionized since time immemorial, that there is a difference in pay between men and women either A, is a complete lie, or B, this is the worst union ever that hasn't been doing their job. I think they've got to be fishing for something, trying to claim that this job over here, which is mostly women, isn't paid as the same as this job over here that's mostly men, and they're comparing apples and oranges as opposed to apples and apples, which is what pay equity is supposed to be all about.
Yeah, it's sort of ridiculous to even think that something like that could be in place and exist today, although, they really hardball it with governments. Unknowledgeable MPs and legislatures are giving away all sorts of taxpayers' dollars all the time. Look at the big federal pay equity just a few years ago. It's it's quite a fraud on taxpayers. I don't think the issue exists, and certainly they haven't brought forth any proof. But hey, like most of the progressive liberal issues that we're discussing in Canada today, it sounds good.
It sounds good. It doesn't need to have proof. Let's talk about some real numbers then, and that is on the issue of the Canada Post pension. This is the company wants changes to the pension plan. The union is saying no, but the bottom line is this is an underfunded pension plan, isn't it?
Well, it certainly has pension shortfalls. Underfunded, I don't know if that's the issue, because they funded billions, tens of billions, about $21 billion into the pension plan. That's one hell of a lot of money that's gone into there, that most of it was funded by taxpayers, about $3 for taxpayers to every $1 that employees put in. But in terms of making good on the promises that have been made on these pensions, it's not sustainable, and it is short. I was probably on your show when we went to the House of Commons, the Finance Committee, to discuss it just 2 years ago. But nobody seems to have any initiative to take this bull by the horn, fix the problems permanently, and they just keep dilly-dallying, kicking the can down the road. In fact, the last couple of years, 2 years ago, when the Canada Post said they had a profit, they only had a profit because the federal government, the House of Commons, actually had to implement a bill to change the requirement for the Canada Post to put $1.3 billion into their pension plan to make it look like everything was okay and everything was fine, and miraculously, avoiding that $1.3 billion payment, Canada Post was able to show a profit. So it's all bogus on so many fronts. Let's just get real, make the changes. The changes that the management has brought down in this deal look like good changes for the company, Canada Post. Certainly good changes for the younger employees who are forced to pay more and more into these pensions all the time, and it looks less and less likely that they'll ever get anything out of them.
Well, let me ask you then, how, essentially we're talking about unfunded liabilities, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And basically what they do is they look at the amount of money that exists in the plan, the amount of money that's been promised to government employees over the next, it's a lot of times it's 30 years now. They actually did a study that shows that government workers live on average 5 years longer than the regular Canadian taxpayers. A combination of retiring early, you're retiring with these big gold-plated pensions that are funded with taxpayers, and it's just a huge disparity, unfairness on so many fronts.
How big is the unfunded liability for Canada Post then? I've heard it's as high as $6 billion. Is that an accurate assessment? Is it more? Is it less?
That's an accurate assessment based on what they called the tradition of pension accounting for time immemorial, which was a solvency calculation. If they closed the plan tomorrow, how much money would they need in it today in order to fund those liabilities? And it was over $6 million. It was about $6.5 million.
Million or billion?
I'm sorry, billions.
Billion, okay.
$6.5 billion. On top of that, they have about $3 billion of retiree health benefits as well that are included, that the taxpayer is going to have to bail out unless they fix those problems too. So, you know, it's just I think the unions are starting to realize that this problem is so badly broken that they've got to get away from it. I think that's why they changed the channel from the pay equity, you know, from pensions into the pay equity issue, and I think they're doing what they can to. They don't want to have that public discussion anymore. Just the largest pension fund in North America is a pension fund run in the United States by the Teamsters Union. It just went bankrupt, and it looks like their pensioners are going to be only getting 50 or 60 cents on the dollar.
Well, you know, this is, I've got family members that are in public sector pension plans, Bill. I'm sure you do as well. Most Canadians know someone or are related to someone who is in one of these plans. And you know, well, the argument is, don't worry, it's backed by the government. But, you know, that means that we, the taxpayers, are going to have to pick up the tab or let it go bankrupt the way the Teamsters did. And that's not good for pensioners. I remember watching as the city of Detroit was going through receivership and finding out that these pensions that people were promised that were unaffordable, that they weren't going to get them. That's not good for anyone involved. It's better to have the honest discussion now and fix problems now rather than continually kick the can down the road.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's not only Detroit. Illinois, you may have noticed, Puerto Rico just went bankrupt. A major problem there with their pensions. It looks like the pensioners, even in a government-funded system, are only going to get about 60 cents on the dollar. Look at California and numerous cities that have gone down. Last year, there was a town in Nova Scotia that, for some reason, the media doesn't even jump on this and to tell the story. Bridgewater, Nova Scotia went bankrupt over a police pension problem that they've had, and there's a huge disaster looming out in Newfoundland. We've been watching that for a couple of years. They recently brought in a budget that increased spending 4.5%, which was pretty huge considering how badly the economy's floundering. 90% of the increase in the budget is just going into pensions. There was a very minuscule amount that went into program spending, and the problem out there is really huge. And we had always thought that maybe it was New Brunswick that was going to be the first province in Canada to go bankrupt.
You think it might be Newfoundland now?
They're getting really, really close. The part of the deal was the unions are always tied in politically with these deals. The Newfoundland government was really floundering badly last year, and it looked like they were going to have a hard time going into an election. The premier, who was just on his way out, sat down with the teachers and promised them $135 million a year for their pension bailout. It's something that looks like it's going to continue ongoing for a couple of decades, when already the province was struggling. The federal government had to go into Newfoundland, and they defaulted on $238 million worth of loan repayments that the federal government had given them some time ago to get through some financial problems that they had. They gave them another $32 million bailout in order to just help the province out of their financial straits that they're in now. And yet, on August 31st, they're going to have to pump $135 million into a teacher's pension plan that's $2 billion short for only 6,000 teachers. And,
unreal. I mean, This is where you end up if you don't deal with the problem now. We'll see what happens. I know that a lot of people are worried about the loss of mail delivery, especially seniors, small businesses. I keep hearing about being worried about the loss of mail service, especially because they rely on that for so many payments, both to vendors and from vendors. And so that has to be of concern. But I guess at the end of the day, we've got to deal with this very real issue.
Yeah, it's a problem for everybody, and you certainly can't blame the employees working in Canada Post. Imagine the frustration and stress and concerns that they're going through. Some deal that was promised them by the unions, it turned out to be bogus and not sustainable. My heart really goes out to them, the businesses that are going to be affected by Canada Post, and the quite likely potential bankruptcy of Canada Post. Let's get this thing privatized. Let's fix the pensions and move on and focus on the big issues.
I think the time to privatize Canada Post might have passed a little while ago. Fewer people sending mail each and every day, and that's part of the problem for the workers and for the pension, as well as for Canada Post going forward. Bill, thanks for the time. Thanks for the insight. We'll have to have you back soon to discuss the issue of the Canada Pension Plan revamp and how so much of this is a bailout for public sector pension plans.
Don't get me going there.
All right. Well, I won't get you going now. We'll call you next week about that. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of The Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.